be here with us today. My name is Katie Walters, and I'm the Executive Director of Leadership Kitsap. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, it's my privilege to welcome you to LIFT, Kitsap Women's Leadership Network. And we started this, a couple years ago, and I'm so excited to continue this program. If you are new to LIFT, we are a community leadership development program hosted by Leadership Kitsap. We hold quarterly virtual gatherings just like this, and we seek to address issues that are important to our community's women leaders. And so beginning of the year, we kind of figure out what women are talking about, what we need, and that's how we've come up with these topics. And so we offer this place as a time to come together, to connect, to learn, communicate, and just really share our common experiences with one another. So we chose the name LIFT. It's based on a Melinda Gates quote: "When you lift up women, you lift up everybody, families, communities, entire countries." And so thank you for being here to lift each other up, lift our Kitsap community up. And I want to thank our Leadership Kitsap executive sponsors: the Kitsap Community Foundation, Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, the Point Casino and Hotel, and Port Madison Enterprises. And especially thank you to Watson Furniture Group, who's our virtual platform sponsor. So a little bit about this platform, which we've had our challenges with today. Remo is a networking webinar platform, and we think it's fun because it's a little bit different. So getting us off of Zoom, because you can really engage with each other at the tables. It's a little bit more like being in person, and we think it's a kind of a fun way to connect and a great way to feel inspired. We also love that you have this presentation format that now you can eat your lunch, and then we'll go back to our table so you can visit with everyone again. But just a little overview: if you'd like to update your profile picture with a photo and additional information so people can connect with you over Facebook or LinkedIn, the little circle probably has your initial in it. If you haven't put a picture in it, in the right-hand corner of your screen, you can update that. And then while we're in presentation mode like this, your camera and your mic will be off, but you'll be able to chat with other participants or ask questions on the right-hand side of your screen. And that way you can also see who's here. You can connect and ask questions of our speakers. And you can vote up questions too if you're like, oh yeah, I wanted to ask that too. And you can vote up the questions that get answered. I know this goes pretty fast, so sometimes we run out of time. If there's any questions that don't get answered, we'll put it in our Facebook group so that we can continue the conversation. If you have any tech questions, there's a need help, and we've been using that today. The need help with a little question mark in the bottom left-hand part of your screen. And then there's some FAQs, and you can actually also contact Remo directly. And there's a few of us online. If we can help, we'll try and help if you want to reach out to us. But what we found, usually by refreshing your screen, that helps to resolve most of the issues. And after this panel discussion, we will return back to your table so you can continue the discussion. So I'm really excited about today's topic, Money Wise, and we've put together this amazing panel for you. I can't wait for you to meet my friends. And generally speaking, in researching this, well, and we all know, women earn less and save less, and we live longer, but we're still responsible for the same living expenses that men pay. So since they live longer, since women live longer, we also face additional costs, including more long-term and overall healthcare expenses. So managing money and career in the midst of life's other priorities is no easy task. So, I mean, we all know, women just manage it all, right? So we're really excited today for us to champion each other, to learn more, advocate for each other, and explore new horizons. So today, to lead our discussion, our Money Wise panel discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Leadership Kitsap board member and Development and Equity Engagement Officer for Virginia Mason Franciscan Health Foundation. That's a mouthful, Sarah.
I know.
Sarah Chamberlin. So thank you, Sarah.
Hi, thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be back with you all today, and let's get started. I'm going to start us off with a quote from Susie Orman. "Once you learn to respect your right to be fully valued, you will find it easy and natural to ask the world around you to respect that value. You set your price, and the world will meet it. When you walk through the world feeling you are more than rather than less than, More will come to you. No one ever achieved financial security by being weak and scared. Confidence is contagious. It will bring more into your life. And so that is a quote by Susie Orman and her book, Women and Money, Owning the Power to Control Your Destiny. And again, I'm so honored to lead this panel discussion today and to learn along with you from three great leaders. So let's go ahead and introduce them now. First, we have Jessica Guidry, who is the Kitsap Public Health District's first equity program manager, a position that was created after Kitsap Public Health Board issued Proclamation 2021-01, declaring racism as a public health crisis here in Kitsap County in May of 2021. For 13 years prior, she worked as the district's emergency preparedness program and has experience in the healthcare and nonprofit fields. Jessica was drawn to public health because of its roots in social justice and has degrees in international studies and public health. Jessica is a member of the League of Women Voters of Kitsap County, the NAACP Bremerton Unit 1134, and Kitsap E-Race, which is Equity, Race, and Community Engagement Coalition. Originally from Thailand, she now lives in Paulsbo with her family. Jessica is a graduate of Leadership Kitsap, class of 2012. Welcome, Jessica. Next, we have Wendy Johnson, and she is a certified public accountant serving as a controller for a local multi-specialty medical group. And she is committed to giving back to our community and has served on several boards, including Kitsap Credit Union, Leadership Kitsap, and Kitsap Regional Library Foundation. She has a passion for personal finance and literacy education. She spends time educating Kitsap's youth on financial literacy and supports KCU's financial education programs. Wendy will often take time to answer questions on financial matters from all age ranges. She truly enjoys watching people from all ages take control of their financial life. Wendy is a graduate of Leadership Kitsap, class of 2014, and a former board treasurer from 2015 to 2021. Dedicating herself to the needs of the people, you will find that Chasity Richardson helping to solve housing problems as a realtor and teaching Bible studies. Prior to attending Leadership Kitsap, class of 2014, we have a lot of those in attendance today. Welcome, class of 2014. Chasity will find teaching leadership competencies like conflict resolution, team building, effective communication, and more in the local church. In addition, Chasity owned and ran a successful cleaning business that served Kitsap County. While cleaning was the task, development of other female entrepreneurs became a priority. Chasity holds a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Chapman University. She is a certified professional life coach, licensed evangelist, and philanthropist. On any given day, you will find Chasity working to enhance the lives of others one way or another. Chasity is also a military spouse of 25 years and a mother of 3 amazing children. So everyone, please welcome our panelists. Welcome, ladies. So to everyone in the audience today, as we go through this presentation, if you have any questions, please add them to the general chat. You can also upvote the questions, as Katie mentioned, if you would like to see those answered. All right, so Wendy, we're going to get started with you. Generally speaking, and as Katie mentioned earlier, women earn less, save less, and live longer, but we're still responsible for the same living expenses that men pay. So what are some financial literacy basics all women should know? What resources are available to us women in Kitsap?
So thank you very much, Sarah. It's a delight to be here. Is the computer microphone working now? No. So I apologize, my computer microphone is not working. So we got to work around here. As Sarah mentioned, I have a distinct passion for financial literacy for all age groups, and particularly with young folks. But I congratulate everybody for being here, because no matter how much I learn, there is always more, always more. So we know as women and CEOs or and CFOs of our own households, the number of elements that go into our financial lives, and every one of these can have significant impact at one time or another. And every single one of these could be a seminar in and of itself. So we're not going to go into that kind of detail today, but I love answering questions and helping people understand these. What we're going to touch on very briefly is a little bit about retirement and wealth building, and then a little bit about just little changes that you can make every day in your individual budget that can hopefully help you, maybe something you hadn't thought of before. So something in any reading that you'll do, you'll actually find that people who are wealthy will say that controlling spending is actually the most vital part to earning wealth or to being wealthy. It's not so much what you make, it's whether you spend it all, right? Living below your means is actually quite critical to building wealth and making your financial life stable and sustainable. So I don't know if you can see these slides, but I'm talking to these points. But if you can't, I'll just keep going.
We don't see them, Wendy.
Okay. Yeah. But we'll try to share them again and see what happens.
We can always share them later too on Facebook.
Right. Okay. So with regard to retirement, I read something interesting that said 56% of adults in this country don't have any idea what they're going to need to retire. But 100% of us are just sure that we want a good retirement, right? So how do you get there? What does it take to get there? So I think we've all heard about maximizing your 401k. That's the kind of the buzz phrase out in the world. Maximize your 401k, maximize your 401k. But what does that really mean? And ultimately what that means is pay yourself first. Have that taken out of your paycheck. And then the next question is inevitably, how much? What is going to get me where I need to be? For most people, a minimum of 10% is what they need to be doing. Ideally, you're doing 15%. And if you have goals of retiring early, you should be doing 20% in the investment of your choosing, whatever makes you comfortable. Most employers have some good funds in their 401k plans that will help you meet your goals. Matching does count. If you're fortunate enough to work for a company that matches, say, 5%, then you need to do 10%, and they will do the other 5%. Some people say, wow, that's a lot. How on earth am I going to get there? So what I talk to people about generally is each year, as you get a raise, take a portion of that raise and start bumping up your percentage into your retirement plan. And you'll find eventually that you'll get to where you need to be. We'll move on to more simple, easy steps that can be taken on a day-to-day basis. But one of the first things I tell people to do is you really need to think about goal setting. And you need to revisit the goal setting annually. If you're not currently able to live within your means, make some plans. If you have a partner, talk with your partner. How are we going to get there? So 2008 is a reference to the financial crisis of 2008. A lot of people sort of wonder how we got there. So since World War II, historically, for every dollar that was brought into a household, people owed 40 cents in debt payments. Mortgage, cars, credit cards only became a thing after World War II. In 2008, the 2 years leading up to it, average household in the United States owed $1.60 for every dollar that they brought into their household. So that was the house of cards that led to that crash. A lot of this was taking cash out of home equity loans. That was a big thing. People would cash out, cash out, cash out. They would say, pay your credit cards off with that, right? And then people didn't have the habit not to run their credit cards back up. So one of the very simple rules that we follow in my house, and that I advise people to do, is never, ever, ever carry a balance on your credit card. It's just, think about taking out a bank loan for a tank of gas, for a trip to the grocery store, for the sweater that you bought at Macy's. You would never take out a loan for those things. So get there as fast as you can to paying off your credit cards every month. You only need 1 or 2 cards. All those enticements they give you at the stores to sign up for their cards, unless you're making a big purchase for furniture or something in which you get a huge discount, I would say those are generally not worth it at all. When I got married some 30 years ago, my husband and I sat down and we set up some simple rules. And one of our rules, which I've learned over the years had immense wisdom, was don't impulse buy. So we set a limit of $20. So this doesn't refer to the pack of gum that you're buying at checkout, right? So if you see a sweater or a pair of shoes or something in the store, I have to go home. I can't buy that if that wasn't something I was already planning on buying. If I'm still thinking about that 2 or 3 days later, then I can go back and buy those things. Once I've thought about it, planned for it, and not just simply reached for it without thinking. Setting up funds is something else that I advise people to do. So the car payment one, this is something I tell people, always have a car payment. And they're saying, what are you talking about? The goal is to not have a car payment, right? I call this the rule of Stephanie. So I have a sister named Stephanie. And when she was in her late 20s, she called me up and she says, oh, I'm so excited. In about 5 months, my car will be paid off. I'll have $300 more a month to spend. And she was just full of ideas of how to spend this $300 a month. And I said, so you're going to drive that car until you're 90 years old then, right? And she said, what? That doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? I said, well, if you're going to spend all that money that you're currently spending on a car payment, in a few years when you need a new car, what are you going to do? And she said, I don't know. She's a teacher, right? It's not easy to just carve another car payment out of your budget once you've gotten used to spending it. I said, you need to save that $300 a month. And then when you buy another car, you'll have either a very healthy down payment or you'll be able to pay for that car. The other thing the car fund is allowed to do is pay for, your big maintenance items, not your little maintenance items, not your oil changes. But, regular service can cost $600-800 these days. It's terrible. So the car fund is for tires, large maintenance, and a nice down payment on the next car. And you have that money ready for that next car payment. There are other funds. If you're a homeowner, I would advise you to set a certain amount of money away every month for when your furnace breaks, your dishwasher goes, your washing machine goes. I can't tell you how many people have said, well, I would have been okay this month, except my dishwasher broke. Well, if we own things, one thing we know is they're going to break. We don't know when they're going to break, but we know they're going to break. So if you're carving a certain amount of money out of your budget every month for items like this and setting it aside and making sure you follow the rules, that those funds are only used for those items, you'll find that your budget won't have such dramatic impact when things go wrong. A tiny little thing that I have one of my girlfriends on is before you get paid again, and I'm doing this now that I'm older and I can do this, right? I have a little bit of money generally left over before my husband or I get paid in our checking account. Whether it's $35, $50, $100, whatever it is, when we get paid, I take that amount that was in there and I put it in one of these funds. So that will bolster these funds So I call it making myself broke. So what that just means is when you get paid, if there's money left in your checking account, if you're fortunate enough for that, put it into one of your funds and let it help you at a time when you need it. My goal for all women is to have the lifestyle continuity in retirement that you had when you were working. If you follow steps like this and you're maximizing your retirement savings, this is really very achievable. So I will pass it back to another panelist. I hope that was helpful, and I'm available to answer questions later if you're interested.
That was great. Thanks, Wendy.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to Jessica next. So in addition to taking control of our own finances, women also need the confidence to go for the job, to go for the promotion, to ask for equitable pay and benefits. So Jessica, how can women support each other in the workplace, especially those that are in a marginalized community?
Jennifer, thank you so much for that question. And Katie, thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. So, a lot of us have struggled to get where we are at the workplace. Having multiple identities that have been underestimated or marginalized due to race, disability, sexual orientation, body size, and so on, that can have a compounding or amplifying effect to the discrimination we experience. And some of you may have heard of this concept of intersectionality. It was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. There are data and lived experiences that demonstrate that this especially unfair burden of discrimination and discriminatory practices exist. And Katie, I really loved your reminder of why this network is called LIFT, because exactly what we need to do. If we lift, up our colleagues and our friends from marginalized communities, we lift up all women. We need to work together. Our collective success benefits us all, and this is not a zero-sum game. And I think there are three highlights I just want to highlight. Three strategies I would like to highlight. So the first one is we need to first build our awareness and our empathy. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to listen when women from marginalized communities talk about their experiences. We should not at all ever minimize, the experiences of our colleagues just because, that person, didn't mean that, or, you're exaggerating or whatnot. That's no. While discrimination isn't always intentional, that doesn't make it okay. Something I really recommend, and I don't know if y'all have seen this book, it's called Inclusion on Purpose, an intersectional approach to creating a culture of belonging at work. And it's by Ruchika Tulsian. I really highly recommend it. And if you like podcasts, I would check out her conversation with Brene Brown on her Dare to Lead podcast. This book was really life-changing for me. And she centers a lot of her stories and advice on the experiences of women of color, and especially of Black women. And Ms. Tulsian, she not only provides data, she provides stories, but she also provides strategies that can be done at the individual level and the organizational level as well. And when we work on our learning and building our awareness, we have to make sure that we don't put the responsibility of our learning on our colleagues who are, experiencing these injustices. There are a lot of resources available, about inclusion at work. And you may have colleagues who want to talk about it, and that's really a case by case in your call, but just something to keep in mind. The second strategy I would like to highlight is that we should shine the light and then get out of the way. And that phrase comes from the book Inclusion on Purpose, and it's the name actually of one of the chapters. And what this means is that we should use our position or our influence to support and create spaces for and opportunities for women from marginalized communities. When you notice that their voices are ignored, redirect the conversation to give them space to speak. So if you're at a meeting, for example, and you notice that one of your colleagues, let's say, a colleague is a woman of color, makes a comment, and then, no one says anything, and then someone else, I don't want to say mansplains, but, says the same thing. It can just be as simple as, hey, you know what, I really like, what Jane said about, this issue, and I really want to, emphasize that. Things like that can really make a difference. Openly praising the contributions of other women, especially women of color, suggesting them for speaking and promotional opportunities. Then once you've done that, give them the space to be the rock stars that they are. Give them the spotlight. If they want to share it, they'll let you know. And then the third thing is, to speak up when you can. And I recognize that I have, immense privilege, and I am a program manager where I work. And also because of my very vague title, equity program manager, that gives me the space to be able to speak up when others may not feel as comfortable about speaking up. Also for me, I'm biracial, and sometimes people perceive me as kind of culturally ambiguous. So sometimes I use that to my advantage because people may feel, I hate to say this, but more comfortable getting feedback from me. But speaking up, when you see something that shouldn't happen, is really important. Silence can be seen as complicity. And I understand that not everybody has, maybe the safe enough work environment to make that happen. And I'll give a couple of examples. I mentioned that my job title is pretty vague. And, at work, there's this initiative about recruiting some individuals for a board. And I was given the opportunity to look at some of the materials, and some of the language and some of the materials was problematic for me. And, a year ago, 2 years ago, it would have just flown right past me. And in particular, there was in the position description, there was a comment in there about, the person should, the candidate should be calm and articulate and able to participate in civil discourse. And it was really interesting because, some of you, hopefully all of you know that often those words are used to are weaponized, especially against women of color, especially against, Black women and also Black men as well. And I've heard people talk about this publicly as well. So for me, it was like, well, this really bothers me. Do I say anything? But I realized that I had the platform. I had the ability. I was asked to give feedback. And so I did. And, I had to give feedback to my supervisor, and, who's a white man, but he was very open to my feedback. And so I told him. And that was, not to glorify what I did, but, it's being able to speak up. Another situation, and this was more about when I saw something that concerned me. I was on a webinar, an online class, actually. It was a couple of months ago. And I knew one of the classmates, and we were listening, and then one of our other classmates started making these really racially inappropriate comments. And my colleague, who is a Black woman, she spoke up and said, hey, well, can I share with you as a Black woman, this is my experience. And she, described her experience wonderfully. And, in a way that to me was extremely understandable. And the person just ignored what she said. And then someone else spoke and said, hey, as a white person, let me tell you this. And, she felt extremely gaslit. And so she actually just left the conversation. She checked out, she logged out. And so for me, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what happens next? Do I say anything? But it really concerned me. And, for me, checking in with folks, like, I feel like I have to have the most perfect thing to say. But then I realized, what? Forget about, having the most perfect thing to say. It has to be authentic. So I reached out to her by phone, got her voicemail. So I let her know, hey, I'm thinking about you. I was really concerned about what I saw. And I want to make sure you're okay. And please know that, I'm here, I'm here for you. I also, messaged her on Facebook, Facebook's, saying it again. And she reached out to me, and, she felt more comfortable, sending me an email. And while this was not like the most, it wasn't a profound statement, but even letting people know that you see what they're going through, you care about them, and you're available to talk. And even if you don't fully understand what's going on, but that you're there, can be really powerful as well. And it really, also depends on your relationship with the person. So, I could go on and on and on, but I don't really see myself, as an expert in this. This is something that I'm learning, and there's not one size fits all approach. And really what I recommend, if you're interested in learning more, or if you're interested in connecting with some amazing DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion experts, especially locally, or if you want to know some really great resources, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to make the connections. And especially if you have resources that you're really excited about, I please ask that you let me know as well. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you very much for sharing those 3 strategies. They're all sometimes not the easiest for anybody, but so incredibly vitally important to do, just as we're here today, is lift each other up and stand up for each other. So thank you very much for sharing those. All right, Chastity. Some of the most resilient women I know are Navy spouses, just as yourself is. So, Chastity, you bring a perspective of reinventing yourself, building your own businesses, and empowering women. So, what is your advice for women entrepreneurs? What skills do they need to begin their own businesses?
So I prepared for a little bit different question, but I think that I could answer that. So first, thank you, Katie, for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to come back and to share a little bit of my life's experiences. As a military spouse, it is very, we know that we move around often. That's not anything new. But we had the fortune to be able to stay in Kitsap area for the last stint, because we were stationed there twice, was 17 years. And so that's like unheard of. And so my husband had less than 2 years to go. And we thought, oh, for sure, they're not going to move us. And he came home in July of 2019 and he said, I think there's talk about us moving. And I said, we built the house. We built the house and we have less than 2 years ago. Like, we're not going anywhere. And so, let the Navy know we're not, we're not going anywhere. And so, needless to say, that was in July. August, our house went on the market. And in September, we were in Virginia. And so I went through a little bit trying to really get my bearings back because I had finally found entrepreneurship. And so to think that I had started all of that, built all that, invested in so many people, people in Kitsap had become family. I'm from New Jersey, but I consider myself a Washingtonian. And so it was really hard to think that all that was kind of just ripped from me. And here I was in like this new place and I didn't know anyone. And I don't know if you've ever been to Virginia, but the culture is very different than it is in a laid back Pacific Northwest. And so it was very, very difficult. And so I had to really dig down deep. It took a little while. I took off for about a year, just kind of trying to go back to old things like owning a cleaning business. So I had different cleaners come to the house to try to see exactly what the canvas was, how much are they actually paying the employees. And I found out the canvas was way different. The standard was way different. And so I really struggled with actually putting my name on something that wasn't excellent, right? I wanted to perform well. And it just didn't seem like it was working out. The numbers didn't work out. And so I really struggled for a little while. And then one day, you guys know I'm a person of faith, so I'll share that part too. But one day I was laying on an air mattress. We were waiting for our furniture to come to the rental. And I realized all my prayers about the things that I wanted in the future had been answered where I was in that moment. And it kind of took me back a little bit. And so I had to kind of get myself together and lace up my bootstraps and, trust that God doesn't make any mistakes. And if he brought us to it, he'll bring us through it. So, it was really hard, but I had to start the process of reinventing myself. To do my part about the reinvention. And so some of the things I had to do is really take inventory of myself. When I initially started the cleaning business in Washington State, I was able to get right when I got my license, I was able to get started, not because I went through this elaborate course about starting a business or about having a cleaning business. It was, if you grew up with my mom, if the floor didn't have vacuum lines, then it wasn't clean. And so even though someone else may not have had that experience, that was my frame of reference. So I could literally clean the stink off of anything. Like it did not matter. And so I realized, through prayer that that was a talent that I had. Everyone can't clean. I mean, we'd like to think, it's a simple task. You could clean, but not the type of cleaning that will bring in revenue. We need that level of cleaning. And so, I wasn't able to, even though I had that experience, it then did matriculate into being a realtor now because I was constantly around houses and all that. So it was an easy transition, but I had to think about who I was, what frame of reference I had, what my experiences are, what do I have inside of me that is marketable. What do I have? And I had the cleaning business, then I had exposure to realtors that I listened to, because if they wanted a house ready to go on the market and to perform well, I was the go-to person. And so I had that exposure. And so I began to massage the idea way back before I knew I was going to come out here. So back to my point, I could get all over the place, but so take inventory of who you are, who you are, what you love to do. I generally love helping people solve problems, whether that's getting your house up on the market because it needs to be cleaned really well, or getting your house sold because you got to go to another duty station, whatever the case may be. I genuinely like doing that. So helping people is something that I like to do. So it had to be something like that, right? Also, what can you do? What you have to figure out something as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. You have to figure out something that you can do in the good times and in the bad, because you're going to have the ebbs and the flows in entrepreneurship, in reinventing yourself. So you're going to have to pick something that really resonates with you, that you like. I literally have to shut myself off. I work from 8:30 in the morning to 11:30 at night. And I don't find that a problem because I like what I'm doing. So it's like when I get ready to stop. I'm like, oh, I could do a little bit more. But the fact of the matter is I do have to sleep. So I'm fresh in the morning and I don't make crazy decisions, right? And so I really love what I'm doing. So that is very important. Um, so also be ready to take a risk. You're going to have to take a risk. It doesn't feel good. It's jumping off into the unknown. But like I said, when I sat down or laid down on that mattress, I didn't even realize that I had been consumed by my prayers. And had we not been kind of plucked out of Washington State and placed in Virginia, I would have never been able to, at least right now, I don't think so, but I don't know that I would have ever been able to become a realtor. I don't think I would have ever been able to really work on the philanthropic things that I'm doing. And I mean, it's not I'm donating millions. Don't get me wrong. It is I received book scholarships when it was time for me to go to college because I had a single mom and we just didn't have the money. So every commission check that I get, I send a book scholarship back to the church that gave it to me in New Jersey. And so that's important to me. But if I would not have done that, because I would have stayed comfortable in Washington, and not saying I don't want to go back and just keep praying. Um, but the fact of the matter is, if I had not accepted and had a willingness to take that risk, then I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be able to bless those children with what they need. I wouldn't be able to do things like this, because honestly, I love being all involved. So I'd be over there cleaning houses and all that. I would have totally missed it. And so being willing to take that risk is so important. And financially, we have to really we can't, that's the whole thing, right? We have to be able to, like Wendy said, ignore that impulse spending. I mean, I'm getting there. I'm like 75, 80%, I'm getting there. I think we're all a work in progress. But sometimes we're like, oh, we'll save for a rainy day, or we'll save for tomorrow. Tomorrow may come sooner than what you think. So when I decided to become a realtor, I had no idea. Now I knew the class was like $500, right? But I had no idea the fees to get started were close to 3,000. And so had I been more impulsive, had I been very wasteful, I had been in the future, just buy the shoes, buy the purse, buy the hair, buy everything, any and everything you want. If I had done that, then when it was time for preparation to meet my purpose, I would have not been able to do it because I wouldn't have had the financial capacity. And so it's important when you're reinventing yourself to understand that you have to be responsible financially. The other thing I would say, ignore the naysayers. Just ignore them. They're going to be there. They're going to say things that you don't want to hear, but let it be a motivator as opposed to something to kind of bring you down. People don't always understand who we are. They don't understand what our callings are. They don't, a lot of times, don't even understand what our gifts, our natural gifts and talents are, because we don't always share them and they don't usually take the time to find out what they are. So to actually say something about what you're doing, it's like, I need an experienced person to speak to speak on this matter, please, because and so, listening to, for me, my faith, listening to God, listening to what my past experience have to say about me, not what people have to say about me, is so very important. So I think that those are the things that I think are necessary for entrepreneurship, for reinventing yourself, and expect that change is going to happen. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And when it happens, be prepared for that change. So reinventing myself, the crazy thing is when just on the side there, is with the cleaning business, I would have totally missed it if I tried to force that, because COVID was right around the corner and my business would have tanked quickly. And so, thankfully, I didn't go in that direction, but being able to also take into consideration the things that are going on around us. So in this time and era, AI is taking over just about everything. Computers are actively involved in everything that we do. And so if we are going to take the risk and start to reinvent ourselves, don't go back into an industry that's going to be don't try to be a cashier at Walmart, because they're slowly fading away. So take the things that are going on, the current events in this world, and really critically think about those things before you make those types of leaps. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Thanks, Chastity. That was great. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I know here in Kitsap and all over the country, all over the world, women are just teetering on that edge, tiptoeing with taking that risk. And like you said, waiting to meet their purpose. So I know that had to have helped someone consider putting their toe over that line today. So thank you very much for that.
Awesome.
So we've got some questions. Well, let me see. Do we have questions? We're going to do those. Katie, do you see questions? It says we have 6, but I can't get to them for some reason. We had a couple of more for you guys, but we're getting short on time. So I want to make sure that we address some of the questions that you guys might have.
I do see one for Jessica.
Okay.
How to deal with the emotional reaction a person who is marginalized when they speak up. What has been the experience of those who felt they wanted to say something but were uncomfortable with? I think I got all of it.
Okay, so sorry, I'm reading it as well, Katie. So how to deal with emotional reaction. So are we talking about the reaction of the person who is marginalized, or are we talking about when they do speak up and everybody all of a sudden is quiet and uncomfortable? Maybe I'll address that first. And for me, it's showing up potentially. So let's say, for example, I'm in a situation, and others, please speak up too, where if someone were to speak up and say, well, I think that, this is how I feel. what you're saying discriminates against me and all of this. Part of this is, I think sometimes we have this automatic reaction to be right, and then when someone gives feedback, we feel threatened by it. And part of it is, just saying, what, I'm sorry, I didn't realize so let's say, for example, if they were speaking up about something that I said, part of it is that humility and realizing that we're all learning, and we can't. Well, I know I personally can't always be right about everything. My husband will tell you that, and that I know I make mistakes. So for me, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that the context of what I was saying is hurtful and has like a racist history. I will do better, and I really appreciate you giving me this feedback. So I think part of it is, and if they were speaking to someone else, it's like, what, thank you so much for that feedback, and I'm so sorry that this was uncomfortable, but I appreciate you opening our eyes to this as an issue. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think being silent and being, sometimes we have to sit in that discomfort, right? When someone gives really tough feedback. But I do think at least thanking people for saying their piece, but being genuine when doing so, and acknowledging that we all have a lot to learn and that we all can grow together. And hopefully I addressed that question. And then let's see, the experience of those who felt like they wanted to say something but were uncomfortable with. Yeah, and for me, it's I know that I fumble when I acknowledge people and all of that. But I've been lucky that I think people understand where I'm coming from, but also I just realized I need to do better too. And I'm so sorry that I'm rambling with this, and I'm not sure, Jamie, if I addressed your question properly, or if anyone else on the panel wants to answer that.
Hey, yeah, so I would like to speak up on that one. I know it's not necessarily my topic, but I do have a little bit of a perspective. And I didn't really realize the value of um, when racism occurs. I didn't realize the value of someone that looks like the offender speaking up. I didn't realize the value until my kids, I had given them all chores to do. And I had 3 kids. I had given them chores to do. This was like 10 years ago, maybe something like that. And I'd given them chores, and one of them, classically, one of them's going to try to get over and not do their their chores. And it just so happened, like in that moment, that I said something to that kiddo. He tried like the Dickens to deny and deflect. And one of the other siblings came in and said, "No, that is exactly what she said, and you didn't do it." And that dissolved everything. It wasn't until that moment that I realized it has to be someone that looks like the offender that says something. Because as long as the person that is being offended is speaking, well, we already understand what the canvas is in this dynamic. We need to bring a different dynamic in, a dynamic that looks like the person that's doing the offending, and not necessarily. A lot of times, people learn those behaviors and may not even be aware of language, behaviors, things like that. So it's not a I don't think that I think we all deserve to be loved. We all need to be respected, but also need to be given the benefit of the doubt and at least a fair, loving conversation around a potential offense, where sometimes it's a little bit more aggressive and, cooler heads would prevail. Nobody's asking anyone to deal, let's just be honest, nobody's asking anyone to walk away with white guilt for something that their ancestors did. Um, it's just, let's have a conversation so we can look eyeball to eyeball. And when things happen, that someone that looks the same can step in and say, "No, I don't think that was appropriate." And it doesn't have to be loud and obnoxious, just a conversation. Because, like you said, most people don't, I won't say most people, but in my experience, most people don't realize it. They just are, they made a mistake. And I know I want forgiveness when I make a mistake. It's different if I'm just blatantly doing something. But if I make a mistake, we should treat it like everybody wants to be forgiven when they make a mistake. So anyway.
Absolutely. Great conversation. I want to bring it back to Wendy really quick, just to kind of bring us home as we close out, because we want to make sure everyone can go back to the floor to have some conversation and to speak with our panelists if they have questions. But to bring it back to our topic of being money wise, Wendy, what is the best piece of advice that you can offer for us women to gain financial health and independence, especially, you know, coming out of a pandemic and women have left and are coming back and maybe deciding to stay away, maybe to create a new business. What one piece of advice, if you could choose one, would it be to recommend to us women for financial health and independence?
I think to just take some time and sit down and make some active goals. Right? So every year, add up what you own minus what you owe, and see what's left. And that's your net worth, and that's what you want to grow. And think about the steps that you can take, even the small ones that we discussed today, to make that improve. It doesn't have to be by leaps and bounds. It's a little bit by little bit.
Perfect. Thank
Sarah?
you, panelists. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chasity.
Yeah, one last thing. I just recently won an award, and I'll join a diversity board here at our local real estate association. And I will say that I was very open and honest in my essay. One of the things that drew me to it was going through the office. They had, you know, the pictures of all the past presidents, all the past, you know, and there was like literally everybody looked the same. And so there's an issue with that because there's no diversity in thought. If you want a good product, you have to have diversity in thought. And so if everybody looked the same, probably if we mixed it up a little bit, you might have had an even better product than what you currently have. And so I'll be now working on that board. But I said all that to say sometimes you have to be willing to speak truth to power, because I know what I said was kind of it was hard. It was hard. But I also, something I learned in Leadership Kitsap, had to sandwich it. You say the good things, you give them the meat, and then you say something else nice after, right? And so, you know, I'm sure people didn't mean to do it, but it doesn't mean that it's still not the current situation. And so I look forward to working on that board, but never be afraid to, in love, compassion, fairness, be willing to speak truth to power when it's necessary, because it trickles down from leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, ladies, thank you very much for everything that you've contributed to our conversation today. I want to make sure that we have a few minutes for everyone to connect with you on the floor with each other. And so we at this point are going to send everybody back to the floor. And Katie, I don't know if we have time to welcome them back to officially close things out. But if you guys can stay, I think we have the floor open till 1:30. Is that correct?
We do. So we have the floor until 1:30. So if you're able to stay, please stay and continue this conversation. I think it's been so valuable. I mean, just the whole idea of women supporting other women in the workplace, taking control of our finances, and promoting other women in the workplace being heard and valued. So thank you so much for this really important conversation today. Again, I want to thank Watson Furniture for providing this venue for us so that we have this platform. And if you're able to stay, please take that time to be at the tables. Our speakers will be there as well if you want to connect with them. But to just reflect on what you heard and maybe share your resources. And again, we can continue this conversation in our Facebook group as well. And a copy of this program, if you want to share it with your friends, will be on our Leadership Kitsap website under resources lift. Kitsap Women's Leadership Network. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you so much, Chasity, Wendy, Jessica. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Sarah, for facilitating. And I'll send everybody back to the table so you can continue this conversation.